All right, we're back. It is COMP308 in the winter 2017 semester, and it's week 6, part 1 of our broadcast. I need to talk about a couple of things today. We'll be covering authentication, which is kind of an interesting and complex topic, especially with emerging technologies and Express, MongoDB, so far Mongoose. We're going to add more modules today. This is where we kind of we add quite a lot of head to our project so far. Our project has been pretty good so far, but we're going to continue to add to it. So we're going to talk about that. I'm also going to give you an assignment. It's part of this whole thing, right? So you have a break. Over the break, I'm going to give you something to do. I know people you're going to use it for other things. I'm sorry. Or when we get back, you'll be inundated with other things. And I really want you to be prepared for Angular. And if I was to plan this assignment to happen later, then you would be introduced to Angular later. And then there's also other parts of this training later on. Let's talk about this assignment. Now the assignment is posted. It's authentication. That's what it's all about. And what you're going to do is you're going to modify your Express.js portfolio to include a secure area. All right, let's talk about this. It's called the business contact list. Yay, business contact list. You're going to make a little contact list. March 10th, that's week 8. So that's the Friday before class, right? So before I see you after break, you're going to have your assignment due. 15% of your final grade, right? Same as the other one, right? So that way it's kind of the same level. You're going to create a secure area of your portfolio of business contacts. That means you can make it your friends and whatever you're going to do. Now, this is just a way of testing how you can authenticate. You're going to just create a secure area you need to authenticate yourself to get into, right? You'll have to provide username and password to access this area. The contact list and your authentication credentials will exist in a MongoDB database. It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be on MLab. It could be through DocumentDB, Azure. It could be other places, but you must have an online database. You will be able to perform full CRUD for your contact list. So you'll need to create all required views. So this is kind of, even though it says authentication, there's so much on your database. Now's the test. This is all of the stuff that you need to know for database. Because there will be database stuff on the exam next week. Is start early. Don't wait until, and this is when I say week 8, this is the week after reading week, not next week. Or not during reading week, obviously, because reading week is officially by calendar week 8. But this is due our learning week 8, right? That's why it's March 10th, 2017 at midnight. Okay, so let's take a look. Your secure area must include the following components: a login view, a business contact view, and an update view. Okay, that's interesting. In addition to your site's main nav and page template components, your login view should include the following components: a form that includes a username field and password field and a login button. Or login view, right? I spelled information wrong. Information. Oh, I don't know why that is. Oh, it's double. A repeated word. Oh, I don't know how I did that one. That's like late nights. The application database will contain a user collection, all right? In the single include your username, password, email address, and other relevant information. The username and password credentials will be used for authentication. No registration form is required, right? So you don't have to register. I recommend, you create a registration form for bonus points, right? If the user is authenticated, the differences between authentication and authorization, 2 different things. He'll be taken to the business contact list view, right? The secure place that that shows your list view. We've been doing games list view. It's not like anything we haven't done before. It's just a chance for you to practice what you already know. Otherwise, he'll be redirected back to the login view if his username and or password is incorrect. If a user attempts to access the secure area of your site, they should be redirected back to the login view. Gentlemen here and people who are watching remotely, I'm going to show you how to do all this pretty much today. All this secure stuff, right? There's a premise here. You have a Mongo database set up, right? You already have stuff to look at, a business list and all that kind of stuff. So that's one part is authentication. This part here, the login view. contact list. Well, you have to set this all up, right? So business contact list view, which is secure, right? An alphabetically sorted list of contacts. I'll say it again. That should appear on this page. The connection to the database you create will display all the contact data in a table. I'm talking about an HTML table. There obviously isn't a table in Mongo and kind of a NoSQL database. The table will only include the contact name, a contact number, and email address. All that it's going to show, right? Include an update button and a delete button at the end of each row of the table. Wow, what does this sound like? It's not something we've never done before, almost, right? Hello. The update button links to the update view, right? And the delete button removes the contact form from the database, right? So there you go. So delete, update, full CRUD, right? Pretty much. We'll include the following components. A form will allow the user to update any contact details, name, contact number, email address. The form will include a delete button. I didn't ask you guys to do is the add button. The add button really, even if I haven't said it, should be on the main form, just like we've shown you already. There should be ability for you to add, and I didn't add that in. I don't know how I missed that when I was doing this thing, but it's not there. Include internal documentation as normal. Share your stuff on GitHub to demonstrate version control best practices, and put it up on a cloud host, all the regular things. Include a registration view for additional users to access your secure area using Passport's local strategy for bonus marks. A logged in user's name in the nav bar. I'm going to show you how to do it today for 2 free marks, right? Add the connect flash component. Oh my God, these are all free marks. This one's more difficult if you want to challenge yourself. Set up 1 or more OAuth strategies. OAuth means the ability for you to use things like Facebook and Twitter or GitHub or LinkedIn to log in as opposed to some local password. And there's a way of doing that. We won't cover OAuth today. There's no time. But we will cover OAuth another time, right? Where I want to kind of do a special lecture if I can on OAuth if I have time. OAuth is almost like another information. If you want to do it properly, there's a whole set of steps you need to take to register as a Facebook developer, or a Twitter developer, or GitHub. You get like an API. GitHub is one of the easiest ones to use. LinkedIn developer, these kind of things. You have to register yourself, and you got to get an API key. All right. This is wrong. I got to update the file. A zip archive of website's project files, not or. We need one of these for sure, and a link to GitHub, right? Not preferable, it's required. It used to be only last time I did this. Now it's not an option, and you need to do this stuff because let's see if I can make some space in this insanity. I'll print this out later again. I'll add it on. Oh yeah, this is no good, and I'll go up. That didn't work. But anyways, yeah, a link to GitHub, a link to your live site, on a cloud host or other hosting service, because that could be anywhere you want, right? Those things that you need. From an evaluation criteria perspective, it's worth 50 points, right? So why I didn't put this in last night. What it is, and overwrought craziness. So notice 12 points only for UI, even though, and some people ask me, are you serious? You're only giving me 1 point. There was a comment that I got, only 1 point for UI. Yeah, because UI is not that, it's not the main thrust of what we're doing here. UIs, this is the spread of marks, so 26 points for functionality. And then you'd notice that the internal documentation, version control, and cloud is another 12 points, equal to UI, because that's just as important in some ways. So that's where your 12 and 12 is 24, and 26 for functionality, make a total of 50. This is worth 15% of your final mark for this course, and 20% deducted for each day late. This is due, like I said, March 10th, week 8. So when you come back from break, it'll be due the March 10th, the Friday before we meet, right? As we come back, right? This I can't do a check. I can't do like a check and X kind of thing with you guys, an exercise like, you know, how you're doing with assignment. Won't be able to do that in this case because you'll be gone and I won't see you until this assignment's due, right? However, my recommendation is, because I'm going to give you a lot of this code today, start early, right? Don't wait. You can get going with this kind of stuff. Authentication is troubling. It's not easy. There are a lot of little piece parts. It breaks often, right? And if you don't start early, then this can become a hell assignment. This to the last minute. This is, I mean, I keep saying that, but this definitely is not one you want to leave to the last minute. You need testing time. Shoot this stuff. If you need to program and practice, it's worth 15% for a reason, right? It's because it's tough. And it's not going to get any easier. This course it ramps, right? There's like lots of stuff that happens. It's not, and when we talk with Professor Ilya, one thing he always says is, this is not a web course. And that's not necessarily. This is an emerging technologies course. We talk about different things and how we, you know, how things are emerging and changing on the web. So when you take this course, one of the more difficult parts about it is it's slightly different. It's going to be, even if you did it last time, you know, kind of thing, it'll be different than this time. And like we said, this time we're adding in microservices near the end, right? All right, so that's your assignment number 2, and that would be due, like I said, 10th at midnight. Any questions around this? Yes. eCentennial. No, it's up. If you go to eCentennial like this, watch. Oh, I can't do it because, well, maybe I can. If you search for eCentennial on Google, and you'll get to this little link, e.centennialcollege.ca, right? Okay. And all of a sudden, boom, you're in, right? And then so we're looking at emerging technologies, right? And you can see in the Dropbox that I posted it. Yeah, it will be down tomorrow. eCentennial will be down tomorrow for repair, I guess, and it was down last night. I think they killed it last night. That's horrible. So that's bad, but that's when it is due. So please don't forget this. I know this it sounds like it's easy, but it's not. All right, let's get back to this. So that was the assignment. I need to set up some stuff for today, and part of it, I just want to make sure that you guys know, we have a couple channels, developer, general, and random. Make another one for today, and I know this is kind of messed up, but I want to make another one for authentication. That's how important and different it is, right? So we're going to a little channel, a sub channel called okay. And everyone can join. There's no, it's public, so anyone can join this one. So let's create the channel. Authentication, right? Don't show me this message again. I'll create a channel. Hey there. Up in a couple of views. Now I've kind of prepped for this one, and instead of us doing, I'm going to use this for some drag and drop. For now, I may use this to drag and drop some views instead of creating them from scratch, and we'll talk about why. Because this is a journey, putting this stuff together. Views. The 2 views that I'm going to obviously drag and drop, so you don't have to do it yourself, are the login and registration views. There's just 2 views. Okay, using the same things that we did. Drop it in here. That's why I created this channel. And also, I want you to use this channel for any authentication. It's a sub-developer channel, if you will. Any authentication problems, please communicate with your peers, your classmates in this channel. I'd like to see what the problems are separate from everything else, any other problems. And you may want to split this off if you guys have other issues going forward, because sometimes it gets lost with a bunch of stuff that happens here in developer in general and random. So just for it. All right, let's get to it. So as normal, what we're going to do is we have a COMP308 folder for last week. Now I went with 5B. I'm going with 5B. My recommendation is wait till I put it up and make 6A. it. And I recommend you download it. And if you want to continue from last time, if you want to, you can. I made a few changes I want to talk about in the B class, and it always happens. I'm sorry, because I'm not a robot, right? So it's like, the little button that says you're not a robot. I'm really not a robot. I can't do the same exact lecture. So there's some changes, and I learned from class A, and I'll do things better in class B. So this is, I think, a better version. So that's why please wait. So I'm going to kind of duplicate this and make 6A, right? I'm still using the same database, by the way, online, so that's not going to change. Do here is normal is when I create 6A is I'm going to modify this stuff so you can see it. So I'm going to remove get. Again, you would just right-click and delete if you're a Windows user. I'm going to bring in Visual Studio Code. I'm going to drag and drop this one in here. I just want to make some minor modifications really quickly, so just don't worry about. I'm just going to do it really quick. So 6A. The full CRUD. 6 is all around authentication. Passport. That's what it is, right? That's what we're using, Passport and Passport Local and Passport Local Mongoose. There's a bunch of different ones we have to load in today. Bower.json is going to be 6A. That's the name of it. And I have 6, which is going to be, authentication with Passport. And some of these have to change to 6A. 6A. I haven't created 6A yet, but we will. All that looks pretty good. Save that, and we'll go here and save that. My README file, it's got to be the same, 6A, which is authentication with Passport. Okay, so that's pretty good. Save. Server.js, so far so good. Web config, we're not touching ever, right? Because that causes problems. Not the other ones. So we're going to close these off. I think we covered most of everything that we want to do here. I'm going to go into here and go initialize Git repository really quickly, add that in, and say initial commit. We're doing here. Can't push it yet because there is no Git repository, which we need to create online with GitHub. And we're going to do that by making a new repository, COMP308, winter 2017, 6A. These are all the piece parts I got to make for you guys so that you're ready to go. And it does show you how to do everything. I've been showing you how to do it from the beginning. So hopefully, you have a good sense of the process now. Okay, we're good. So please download there. Don't please, if your code isn't good enough, or if you're not great at, this is a good starting place. So download and install COMP308 Winter 2017 Lesson 6A. Okay, we need to talk about a couple of modules that we're going to be using for authentication. Typically, what we use is a module called Passport. Passport we use to connect. Let's talk about this. Remember, we talked about Express.js being so lean, right, that there is no module to do authentication built in. Another module, an NPM package, onto Express.js in order for us to have the capability of connecting with a MongoDB server and use Mongoose. Mongoose is the way we're doing it, right? So what Passport does is it creates this authentication strategy. There's a bunch of different kinds of strategies. There's a local strategy, right? There's also strategies for Facebook, Twitter, and more, like it says. The documentation is pretty good for just Passport itself, right? It talks about how to create authentication and different login views and everything else. In fact, if anything, the documentation online is probably something better than you can find in a book. right? Because it's modern and it's new. An example of a login, right? Where we have this, obviously it looks to me like a passport authenticate local. You pass that in, right? Notice that there is a passport, some kind of passport object we're going to need. We're going to have some kind of anonymous function or callback where we're going to redirect the users upon authentication to the proper place, right? It says whatever the username, we can kind of put them to their own little site, rec.user.username. That's where they're going to go, almost like their little profile. So that's really how it works. They talk about how to do redirects, success redirect and failure redirect. We're going to see that today, right? So if you success, if not, you failure, go somewhere else. That's a really good promise. That's how that works. That's based on promises, right? Success and failure. Messages, we're going to talk about how to, if you make a mistake, it's going to come up and say, this username is already registered, right? Or it might say something like, incorrect username and password, right? Those kind of flash messages that come up and then disappear, right? Because how are you going to update a page dynamically? You can't. It's very difficult to do. The page, and you can't refresh the page if you're logging in because it's going to ask you to log in again, right? So flash messages almost use Ajax, if you will, of the page, where you can get a little message that says, hey, you failed to do something. And flash messages, by the way, can be used for a lot of different things like that, right? Like notifying the user that things aren't quite working out the way they're supposed to. So we can use a flash, something called Connect Flash that we're going to add in, right? So you see that so far we've got two modules that we're going to talk about. Passport uses something called sessions, right? And cookies, right? So we're going to need to do that. And if you haven't learned about sessions and cookies, that's something else we need to talk about, how that works. So remember we talked about that. There's a PowerPoint that talks about sessions. I didn't go into detail about sessions. So that's another thing that works out. And you can see that you can disable sessions, how you can do that. There's different callbacks. All the different information is here. OAuth strategies. Also, I'm going to skip to this for a second just to give you a high-level overview. See that there's different OAuth types, OAuth 1 and OAuth 2. And OAuth 2 is definitely the way now. It's a better way of doing things. OAuth 1 is kind of the original authentication for providers like LinkedIn and Facebook, I think, uses now OAuth 2. I think they force you to use OAuth 2. They don't allow you to use OAuth 1 anymore. You can see how the routes are a little bit different, where you get the provider and the provider itself, authentication. I want to talk about this third-party authentication thing, right? So how does it work, this third-party authentication, right? Well, the way OAuth works is relationship, right? So I want to make a trust relationship with that third party. Let's say, for example, we trust LinkedIn, right? And you're probably going to trust LinkedIn or GitHub or one of those probably more than me, website, right? And you should, because it's probably going to be more secure, if you believe that, than if I make my website. I already have an account with LinkedIn or GitHub or Google or whatever, Gmail. Then you don't want to continue to create username and password to authenticate yourself over and over again. So it's become more of a better security solution than for you to authenticate locally. After you can use a third party to log in. Now there's different OAuth strategies. One of them would be for every kind of provider. If I scroll down here, it talks about how to create a user profile. And how to do things for Facebook, another install for each of these, another module, a sub-module for each of the strategies. So Facebook will have its own module, how to do routes and permissions, and here's Twitter, and they give you the information on how to connect with all of these, these third-party providers. For you guys on your assignment 2, if you want to also offer up, I want you to also offer up a OAuth strategy if you want to get bonus of local strategy. So you can't just do OAuth. You can't just say, well, everyone logs in through Twitter or Facebook or whatever. There's no local username and password. No. There's an opportunity to log in locally, but also offer some of the most popular options that make sense for your site. For example, if you're not a social media site, maybe Twitter, maybe it's not the best OAuth third-party provider, right? What if you're someone who does a lot of coding? Then GitHub might be a really good idea, right? Here you can see that there's Google, you know, and there's others, right? So if you go to others, you can see that there's a bunch of different kinds of things here, and there's a lot of information on how to do everything from logging in to registration and everything else. Log out is really simple. This is what it looks like. It's really like log out, request logout. You can see this exact code that we're going to use today. And you know what? Redirect me back to the the main site. That's what it looks like. Authorize is a big thing. There's two parts. There's one part which is authentication. Right? Authentication means, again, if we go back, do I know who you are? That's authentication. Authorization is, okay, what can you do? That's authorization. So authentication, who are you? Authorization, what are you allowed to do, right? And between the two things, that's large thing, a regular user or an administrator. And administrators will have different access than a regular user. And there's different ways to set that up. So as you can see, if you continue to go down, there is lots of information here on the site. I've got some ready-made information that I'm going to use today, and that's why because this is a big endeavor to kind of get authentication working within one day, and there's a lot of little piece parts to it, and you're going to see why. We're going to use some of these things that I talked about today. So passportjs.org is definitely a place that you should go. And I'm going to just go down to, if I go to home for a second, inside of our authentication link. So this is passport.js. You should know about this for overall understanding and some documentation about if you run into something you want to try and do. The other thing we're going to use is something called, like I said earlier, is something called session, connect session. So the connect session is actually a NPM module, right? Allows us to use, that enables REST applications, REST basically, a REST API application, right? We need to have connect session in order for us to have session variables that keep track of whether a user is logged in or not. Session variable as it keeps track of logged in and logged out. If I'm already logged into the site and if my session hasn't expired, think about it having an expiration time as well. This variable, think about a variable, right? And it expires. Instead of having an unlimited life, and we put it together on the web, and we use something called cookies in the back end, which is something that your browser has, but it's based on a lifetime. So if you, let's say within 30 minutes, if you go back to a site that you've already logged into, you don't have to log in again. What it does, it keeps track of, hey, has this user logged in? Yes. Is he currently actively using the site? Yes. Cool. Let him log in and let him continue being authorized for the rest of the site. So connect session is a module we need to add in passport authentication, okay? Because otherwise we can't do it properly. We talked about that. So this is some information about this. There's also, I'm not going to put that on Slack because you don't need it right now. Connect Flash, right? Which is another module. Press Flash, and I think it's Connect Flash. I'm just going to this to make sure that it is the right thing. Connect Flash, not this one. Yeah, there's only careful to make sure it's the right one. Connect Flash, NPM. Hopefully I can get one that's, what was that? Yeah, no, don't use those right now. To use Connect Flash, this is the GitHub link for it, but I want to show you that one. And I guess it's not something that's readily available. But anyway, some NPM module that allows us to do messages. And if I was to go to example for Connect Flash, let's just go here. The good thing about this is you install Connect Flash, and it's another module. And what we do is we need to have cookie parser set up as well as sessions. As again are being used. And what we do with it is it sends a message so that it automatically kind of sends a a message that we can see in our view without refreshing the page. That's what Connect Flash is all about. So Connect Flash is usually, they got a couple of examples here that probably aren't really great. So we're going to look at that as well. We also want to look at something called Passport Local, right? So maybe this is where I diverge a little bit from the book. The book is okay, but the authentication strategy that it recommends using simply Passport is very hard. Low-level authentication option, and I don't recommend it. This is much easier and does the exact same thing. So Passport is what I'm going to be using, right? Let's see if I got it. Yay, Passport Local. So Passport Local has different into it. So we're going to look at this one as well. This definitely for some code. Here's an example of creating a new local strategy, and where we have the ability for us to authenticate. And again, you can see the login, and you do use this failure redirect idea if you can't log in. This kind of code is the one we're going to be using, and we're going to be using this particular version of Passport. We're going to extend Passport. This is actually an extension of the regular Passport. Also, as of today, I'm going to be using more and more TypeScript support. I'm not going to be using TypeScript, adding in some types support, right? And already, if you look at your project, so if I go back to your project, the one I asked you just to download, and if I go to package.json, notice that I've added in quite a few @types. So what this does, and how you can install it, is npm install @types body parser or bootstrap or cookie parser or whatever. And whatever I use this @types in front of, code hinting for these libraries, and especially for Node. This is going to help us out with Node. Even though we get really good code hinting with Visual Studio Code and even WebStorm, @types, when we do this @type stuff, it helps us with these, it adds in these TypeScript definitions for the libraries, which gives us code hinting. If I go to server.js or even app.js, so let's go to app.js, and if I hover over now certain things, like for example, Mongoose, right? Mongoose, you can see that my Connect module has full code hinting. We had partial code hinting before, now I have a lot more. Other modules like app set, you can see that I get much better examples, and it tells me how to use certain methods a lot better. So we're going to do, use this a little bit more, and I'm going to, as I install modules, I'm going to also install the type hinting on the back end. It's simply for us to use for code hinting. I'm not using TypeScript for TS files, although you could, right? And it does even help even more than using JS, although the JS versions are very good. Our plan for today, we're going to build that out, and I have a couple of login views. Notice that right now we only have this content, errors, games, and partials. I need to create another set of views for logging in and registering, right? And my recommendation is we create afterwards, right? But first, what's the first thing you think we should do? So we're going to add in all this stuff, this new functionality, right? So imagine it's not just authentication, because I want you to be able to think about how to use Node.js and Express and all that in the future on your own, right? Maybe some piece of functionality. It's the first thing you should do. And it's okay to anybody to answer. Aaron, it's okay for you to answer too. Install the packages. And that's what I recommend. Install the packages, all the packages you need for the stuff first. I know it sounds silly, but I mean, yeah, I know it sounds silly, but I highly recommend these things, because otherwise what's going to happen is you're not going to know what to include, and that's, it's going to kind of mess you up later on. Okay, so we install is Express session, because we can't do Passport, we can't do anything else without Express. Try this out. So I'm going to go here, and we're going to install, so, and for it, I'll clear the screen here so you can see it. So npm install Express session, right? And that's -- save, because it's a development dependency, yeah? It's a development dependency. You can't do, it's a project dependency, I meant. It's not a development dependency, right? All right, so there's my npm install. I've just install this stuff. Express session. Huh? We're on this project without it. Development dependency you can develop. Yes. Well, no, never. I mean, example would be if I look at my package.json, right? Dash save. What it does is it includes it as a dependency on GitHub, and you pull it down, or if you put it up online, it downloads the latest version of Express Session to install, for example, on or Azure or whatever as well, right? Otherwise, it won't know how to do that. All right, so that's Express Session. Now, just like we did, like I said I was going to do, I'm also going to install at the same time, right? Express-session, and this is a development dependency. Sorry, minus save minus dev. The difference, minus save minus dev is the development dependency type. And when I press enter, it's going to download and install my type hinting for Express Session, because we're going to get more complex here, and I want help when I code, okay? Is another piece of JavaScript that comes in, and I want to know these classes and objects. I want to get help when I'm doing them, as opposed to doing it by hand, right? All right, let's clear the screen. Divided in Express Session, that's the first thing. I also want to add in Passport, right? So npm install, right? And let's do this, the at types at the same time, like this. Oh, well, can we? If I do, I can't make them, because if I do that, it's going to be both dependencies, and I can't do that. So, so minus save. With my development dependency, passport at types, passport minus save minus dev. By the way, when we used to do type hinting for TypeScript before, it was way more complex, like way more complex. With npm, and everything else now, that's all gone. Thank God. We don't do any of that. It's all with npm now. It's beautiful, right? All right, so at types passport, we did that. So passport we need, and we also need something called passport local. Cool. So I'm going to clear the screen. Passport dash, not local, local minus save. So this is going npm install at types. One time. Local minus save minus dev, press enter, right? So now here's something that happens sometimes. You may not get your at types. It might happen, right? Because sometimes the module is so new or not so common that you're not going to get support. But for the most part, TypeScript is really good. And the people at Definitely Types is kind of the main website for it. They continuously add more and more community-supported modules for everything. Passport local is what we're going to be using, right? All right, we also need something called Connect Flash, right? We talked about this. So we're going to go to these little modules we're adding in. This is all for authentication, every little piece of this. There's nothing, there's nothing extra, okay? npm install dash flash, right? That's my save. Flash, npm install at types, but I'm going to get it anyway. It's good to practice anyway. Connect dash flash, save minus dev. Oh, flash. Connect flash. Remember that flash message that comes up on your screen without having to reload the page, which is really useful. Thanks. All right, and I'm just going to see if there's anything else that's in my arsenal that I'm going to fire at you guys. Unfortunately, I can tell you that that's all there is, but quite often it's not that. There's not all there is. Yeah, I thought so.
Doing at types dash
dev is minus save minus dev is because it's a development dependency, which means you don't really need it for your project. You're using it to help you build your project, but it's not required. If you didn't install TypeScript, you can still do this stuff. You just wouldn't have less code hinting help. At types means it's a type. It's a type definition library, right? you're using TypeScript, or even if you're using JavaScript, even without TypeScript, right? What it does is in editors like Visual Studio Code, it'll provide code hinting and code coloring and all that kind of stuff for any module, jQuery, Bootstrap, whatever you want. Because sometimes we don't get enough help when it comes to coding, right?
And you won't have this
Nothing.
itself.
There's nothing to install. Just put @types and then whatever the module is in npm, and even if you're not using a node project, you can do it. For even any kind of JavaScript project, I highly recommend using it, because what it does, it adds code hinting in supported editors like Visual Studio Code, like Atom. Storm, I think, also does it. A bunch of them. Okay, so that's really cool. Nice, nice, nice. We're looking at one more module I forgot to tell you about called Passport Local Mongoose. Yeah, it's crazy how many we have to add in. Oh yeah, it's another thing. I know you guys are all freaking out already. Mongoose, right? Which is the which is another one, right? Passport Local Mongoose. I'm going to go to GitHub. This GitHub page here is an extension of Passport Local, specifically to connect to Mongoose, through Mongoose to the MongoDB database. What you do is you add it in as something called a local strategy. But that's how it looks, and it actually gives you some really good code hinting up here. So lots of little things. But I'm adding all these modules. Why? So it makes our coding less crazy for authentication. That's what it does at the end of the day, right? If you actually look at the book and the difficulties you can encounter with authentication, and by the way, the book's code can work, but there are some issues with it, just FYI, even now. Careful with it. That's why I've added this in. You can see that there's a lot of information here, which is really good. I'm happy with that. Static methods and things that we can use, and all kinds of things like passport resetting, which we're going to get to maybe not now, but some other time. Other really cool things, as well as creating things like salting and hashing your fields. You can do that where you can make it more encrypted. Everything happens right in here. I think that's why we use, why I like to use Passport Local Mongoose. Module, oh God, here we go again, right? So we're going to go here, npm install passport -local -mongoose -my save. Whew. I may not get code hinting for this one, right? I'm just telling you right now, I may not get the add types working, but let's see what happens. npm install @types, and then passport -local -mongoose save -dev. If I do that, sometimes it won't show up. In this case, they've actually done it finally. Thank God. All right, so that's everything we need. Woo! No, not yet. Not yet. So you're all ready for break. And why am I adding all this in? Because, like I said, what's the first thing we do? We add all our modules, number one. Let's take a look at our package.json now. You can see that these are all the modules that I'm using. So this is a very high-level overview video, or watch it later. You can see that these are all the modules that I've used so far in my application. Looks like mine, right? If you're missing something in here, then you need to add it in, right? These are dependencies. These are project dependencies that you need to run your project now with authentication. So we just added in express sessions. That's one. Passport local mongoose and passport local, right? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, plus a connect flash, 5 packages, and we pretty much doubled our stuff. Whatever we had in there before is like, and all for make security, right? The bottom part of my, package, which is dev dependencies, development dependencies that aren't required, nice to haves. And what I do is I've installed body parser, Bootstrap, and Connect Flash, and cookie parser, and everything else more or less that we've been using to give us good code hinting. Now, I have to warn you guys that when you want to use code hinting, you need to close your windows down, especially Visual Studio Code, and reopen them again. It activates upon open. An example of this would be, I want to add one module. Here's my app.js. And I want to start adding stuff into my application. So we'll end soon as we add everything, okay? And then we'll take a break. We won't do routing or anything yet, but we'll just add them all in. So underneath where it says body parser, so the top is all of our declarations, right? So these are the declarations. So these are module, inclusions, right? That's what they are. Requirements. That's what they are. They're basically dependencies. Do dependency injection, anything different, any way different than this? For Node.js, we use dependency, and this is the way we do dependency injection. We kind of basically include as high up as we can. We try not to intersperse them throughout, because the earlier we include them, then the earlier we can use them. Remember, we're using lots, right? The first module we're going to add in order is just underneath the body parser. I'm going to make some space here, just so that way you can say it. So this is modules for, we can't add them all in. We'll see why in a second. I definitely need session. So let session, we're going to make a session, is equal to require, start typing, watch this, right? Express, what it does. It finds all the, well, it's this one I want, express session, right? So it already detects that I have it, the module installed, right? Okay, so I want to kind of scroll up. Express session would be the first one. That's a line 10, is where I put it. And then underneath that, you probably want to put all the rest of them. So passport local and passport and all that stuff should be pretty much up here, right? Now there's going to be some differences. Okay, so please bear with me while I do this, right? Don't be upset when I do it in a different order, right? Let passport local, right? I'm going to do this first, right? And you're going to see why there's a requirement later on. Local is equal to passport local, right? Take a look. Here's passport local. I know, eh? Nice. It says passport local. I'm also going to define a local strategy. And sometimes what we want to do is we use, just like we did with Express, see how we made the Express module, and then later on down here we said let equal to Express. We did that down here. We're going to do the same thing with our passport local. We want to define something called a local strategy. I'm going to make it in caps, so we're going to use it in caps for this time. Local strategy, right, is equal to passport local, right, dot, and if you notice now, decoded strategy, right, there it is. So we know what that is, and that's the module that we're going to use. We're actually creating an object here of type strategy, right, which is part of the passport local over. See how it gives me nice code hinting of where it exists even. Take a look, right? So nice. So far, so good. I definitely want to add in, notice I'm leaving Mongoose down here, right? There's a reason for all this insanity, right? See where Mongoose is installed? That's our database, right? Okay, here's the next part. Let Flash, not the Flash, not that guy, right? But basically we want to use require, right? And then it's going to be connect Flash, right? There's connect Flash. This is we're using it for Flash messages to display errors, login messages. Right, that's what we use it for. Okay. All right. So we got Flash, and underneath Flash, as an example, and we're going to use passport, right? So this is all the same stuff. I'm just putting it all in here. Passport before passport local. Doesn't really matter. I mean, you could put passport if you really want to up here, right? So let's put passport up here just for passport is equal to require passport, right? A lot. These are all like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 modules. Another one we're not going to use in this page. Are we good with the modules necessary for authentication? Oops. What happened there? So this is just, these are modules just for getting our stuff going. Logger, cookie parser, blah, blah, blah. These modules, we're always using them for other things, right? And look at, we're almost, like I said, we almost doubled the amount of modules we're using, right? hey, this is a great place to see if our app even fires up anymore, right? Sometimes it messes us up, just letting you know, right? So how do we test that? We're going to use NodeMon, right? So we're going to go up here, clear the screen, and if it fires up, we're good to go, right? And let's test it. That's another thing we should do, right? We should probably test it out. So I'm going to go to local home. If everything goes well, home, and we look at the games list. This connects to local. This is what we had last time, approximately. You may have seen it slightly differently on our build when we made it together. It's the same, right? I did do something different, and I got to talk about the changes I made. One of the changes that I made was we had an issue. We had an error with our routing. And let me point out this error to you from last day, okay? I'm going to go back to Visual Studio Code for a second. Changes before I save this to GitHub and everything else, okay? So, and this is for people who are truly interested in what this stuff happens. So for people like Aaron or anyone else who wants to, loves Node and everything else. Yes, right? Okay, so index.js is, we're golden. There's not much in here, right? It's just we got, our wildcard link, and, we got a couple of lines here we're going to just get rid of. Nice. These are all good, but we also have in our game.js, right, something else. I got to talk about this a little bit. By the way, notice how each of our routes also require this stuff on the top. We need some local, we need to include some modules locally inside these other parts here to make sure that they have access to the functionality that we want to call into play. Now, here's an issue. If I scroll down, and if you went to something like this, if you went to your ID, you might find that you had an issue. And here's the problem with it. Your ID comes on the URL, right? That's where it comes down to. So the URL shows the ID of the person you're going to modify or whatever, right? And if you notice over here, this router.get ID is for pages that we want to edit, pages that we want to add. The problem with this is when we use ID like this is if I put in some other random ID, it will crash your server. Crash, server's down. Why? Because what Mongoose will try and do is convert this into an object ID, which is 24 bits, right? And there's an error that can catch, right? Literally try catch, right? So you need to put this in a try catch, which is what I've done. This is different than last week. Catch, there's this little code that I put. Remember we took this and we took this exact rec params ID and assigned it to ID. Yeah, that's nice and it works basically, but if I put some random thing inside the URL, so what we're going to do here instead is say, hey, Mongoose, look at Mongoose, try to, convert our putting on the URL to a hex string, right? Is it convertible? Yes. It doesn't crash? Fantastic. Continue with the try, right? But if it crashes you here, don't take me here, right? Because if I go here with that wonky ID, my server will crash. Yeah, your whole server, right? So try it out without it, right? I recommend this. So the way, of course, it would work is try it out by yourself. Try and get rid of this catch, and you'll see what we've done. Also, really, I was getting upset with myself with the errors we were getting. They're really ugly errors, right? So I made a couple of pages. Okay, so under the errors, here's errors. I've got a couple of custom error pages. One is called 404, right here. So basically it says, sorry, the page you're looking for is not found. That's what our 404 custom error page looks like now. And a 500, which is an internal server error, or that's what it is, internal server error. So I've left those two together. Now, this is not 100% recommended for development purposes because the type of errors you're going to get, which you're used to from a debugging perspective, but great for users, right? If you actually put this up online, which we're doing, then a user to go on these custom 404 and 500 pages, errors, nicer looking errors, and everything, as opposed to like this ugly, it failed page, right? It will catch most of them. There's some errors that will not catch. We'll talk about that. How do I enable these errors, these error pages? Notice that if I go back to my game.js, when I fail my try, yeah, I send the error not just to the console. I want to be able to capture the error, but also to this errors 404. I redirect to errors 404. right? Errors 404. That's how I redirect. I redirect there because I want these custom errors to appear as opposed to something else. But I need to enable this functionality when it comes to error logging in my app.js. On the bottom of my app.js, I have these new redirects. Take a look. I put them in there. So around line 52 in my code, I have, here's my 404 error handling, right? So any kind of status 400, right, goes to the 404, any 400 and whatever, and 500 errors for internal server errors. Okay, those are the two errors that I've established, and I've commented out the error handler that was built into to destroy than to build. It's easier to use Express Generator to generate your page. Now I keep customizing and customizing our build because that's what we do. We use some kind of scaffold to get us going, and then we customize the crap out of it until it's exactly what we want. I've commented this stuff out just to let you know, right? Now, I don't need this in here. I'm going to delete it, right? I've just commented out so you can see what I've done at the bottom. You may want to, if you're someone, notice that there is a local error is equal to development, and you can choose to see errors in a different way if you want to use the environment variable for developer. That's fine. If you want to try and do that, go ahead. I'm not going to. I'm going to have nice custom errors. I'm going to try and make my page a little sleeker and neater like this, so it's smaller app.js. Okay, that's what mine's going to look like. I'm doing this so you see if it's different on the bottom, why I made the changes. So what does this mean exactly? Well, if I go to my local host and I type in under games, if I go here and go blah, 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 file not found, right? And it says, sorry, the page you're looking for is not found, unhappy face, right? That's me. But you can make whatever you want in there, right? If you go to your 404 page now, you can make that page look whatever you like, right? And same thing, if I want to crash somehow, or if I do something that does crash it, notice it says errors 404. That's the actual link now on the top, right? Right. If I want to look at a 500 error, can I look at that? I go 500. No, because it's 404. It won't take you to a 500 error unless it actually comes up. They'll just say 404 in this error. So my games list. If I go to my games list and I want to kind of edit, notice I get this hash, this 24-bit character hash, right? And I change this. I add like another character, or I modify this to something longer, right? And if I press enter, it's going to give me this 404. If you try that again, last week's code, try it out from last week's code. It will crash your server, right? So that's why I corrected this for you. Putting it out there just to not waste time. A couple hours to digest why it was happening, because it didn't happen last time we were doing this thing. Remember I told you about emergency technologies, how things change all the time? This before just was fine. Now, no. So there we go. And probably the next time we get back together, something else is not going to work, right? If when you do live coding like this, sometimes things go awry, and that's the reason. All right, so we've got going back to our code here for a second. These modules we added in, but we haven't used any of them. And I want to establish one functionality at a time, important not to overload what we're going to try and do. Now, what I want you to do is scroll all the way down underneath where all these app use statements are. Here's app use, yay. And before we do these hijacks, that's what I call them, these root redirects, right? Before I do any of these root redirects, I want to put another, this is where I want to set up the session. So I want to set up session, session. And this is how it works. Use, I love this code hint, love it. Open, you can see I need handlers. And it says a request handler is what I need, right? Which is session. You can see there's my session. And if I open it up, right, it needs options, session options. Open it up again with a object. We're going to set up. Now, I'm going to talk about this very briefly. I need to set up a session secret. Okay. So one of the first properties of my object is a secret. Notice it comes up, session secret. Right? And then I got to establish what it's going to be. You can call it whatever you like, and it should be different for everything you set up. And you can also bury this in a config file. But for now, let's just put in some secret. We're going to use some secret. This is going to be that what's going to encode your sessions to decrypt them. That's the hash key. Don't use it, right? I'm telling you what it is, right? All right, and then we're going to use some uninitialized, right? Save uninitialized. If I open this up, we're going to make this is true. We're going to say that's true. We're going to save uninitialized. That's another option I want you to use. Resave, right, is also the true. So what this is going to do is these two options, save uninitialize and resave, allow us to resave our session. Uninitialized sessions, we'll save those too. And it basically protects us versus things like checking and that kind of thing. All right, so just leave it alone for this part here. That's how I want you to set it up. Okay. We access the module. Does our app still work? Seriously, I want you to do that every time you add a module in. Does our app still work? App still work? Because if it doesn't, we can know what happened, what caused the app not to work. Okay, so we kind of came back here. You can see that it restarted. Look, there were some problems when we were doing this. You can see that I'm good to go, right? Doesn't crash my code. If I go back to games list, I'm good to go. I'm good to go. You can see how it's serving up all these piece parts, right? Every time I go to a different route, it shows me what route I'm going to, right? So that's what the key is here. It tells me what I'm loading. These are all the things that I'm loading in over and over again. So how would you reduce all this noise? Right? Look what I'm loading here. Bootstrap, font awesome. Awesome. Every time I go to a page, I load up a page. I load up my CDN at my library over and over again. Over and over again.
No, it's pretty cool.
Accessing it over and over again. However, if you went to a CDN, wouldn't do that. We'll give you a 304 for one URL or two, right? And it's much more efficient to use CDNs in general. We cache the CDN in most of our browsers. So so for things like Bootstrap, jQuery, Font Awesome, and all that stuff in a production environment, you want to use CDNs. This is okay, and it's actually locally. But if you were to put it up online, because I'm serving it up from my server, you would have to, every time you went there, first time again. So your first load for my stuff would be like, it would take longer, right? So generally you don't want to do this unless you have a specific library you want to serve up that's different than the general libraries that are up online. Okay, so there's my home. We don't have much in my home yet, but we'll put some stuff in there later. Down, right? It didn't kill our server. So this is good. We added in that functionality. And that's what I want you to think about. When you do your own little projects on your own, your assignment 2, some part of it on what I'm doing here, or modify your assignment 1. And I want to talk about this too. When you make your assignment 2, please don't use assignment 1's repo. New repository, a new project for assignment 2. You can base it off assignment 1, kill your Git repository, and restart your Git repository, please. Because I want to see your progression in assignment 2, which is mostly authentication. If you want to use some of this code, it's perfectly fine. You don't have to make your own code up here, okay? Samples that you can use, right? For the exam we're going to do next week, and we're going to get together with, right? We're going to do everything we've talked about up until today, right? Which means some kind of logging in, some kind of database, all that kind of stuff that we're doing. Put samples from here, no problem. You know, it's all open book like normal. It's not going to be something where I need you to study. You know, and best study for you is practice and start off with your assignment 2. That's your best study. Okay, so we've done this part. Things. I want to do that right under here, right? So I want to start initializing our passport and our flash and all that stuff. So we're going to initialize our passport and flash. That's what we're doing. Flash again is the messaging, right? Down here, because notice app use. We're using all these things already, right? So I'm going to go up here. We're starting to use them down here. So we'll declare them way up here. Go down here. We're starting to set up our application, build our application up. Notice it's on the same order. And then we start using them down here. So we're going to say use, and then we're going to go to flash. We're going to do one of these like this. It's that uses our flash. We have incorporated flash app.use. We're loading it in now. The other one we're actually using. passport, right, dot initialize. And the initialize method, what it does is passport, so we can use it later on. That's all we're doing, right? App.use dot session. And you can't use session unless you've already initialized the session variable up here, right? So there's a kind of link. That's why you need both in this order. Think that there's not a specific order for this. Some things will not work if they're put out of order. Sometimes it won't matter. I found that if I use a particular pattern when I create my app.js, I have less issues. Please use my pattern. Right? I'm just telling you, it's just easier. Why would you have to think about this, right? Okay. So far, so good. Anymore because we need a couple things. I can't progress because I need a model for my user. A user model, right? And log out, register, and all that kind of stuff. I need to have what I'm looking for when I log in. Remember, my Mongoose is going to connect to my MongoDB, just like we did with our games list, right? Needs some kind of model to use, right? Here's our models. Notice that right now we have this games, right? And we have this little model with name, rating, and cost. We could have made this much longer and more complex. Talk about something different here when we do this, our user model, okay? Well, we need something like this to hold our users, right? The user information. If we don't have something like this, then how are we going to log in? How are we going to keep track of username and password and all the other things like this for our users? We'll do this model and then we'll stop. We'll take a short break, okay? Click on models, new file, and we're going to call this users.js. Users.js. Okay. Again, some people like singular names, you know, like user or game, because it's the users table, users collection, right? And that kind of thing, right? So in our users collection, what we want to have, we're going to say let mongoose, right, is equal to require mongoose, right? We want to do that. By the way, did we mess that up for games? Did I say it var? Nah, we did. We're good. We're good. We're good people. All right. So games, notice that we did this. And mongoose, we did this. Very similar, right? I want to think about doing things a slightly different way. So I'm going to say let, you can use schema, the actual schema. So I'm breaking this out a little bit differently this time. Is equal to a mongoose, right? So I'm making this a reference. This mongoose schema is just, so schema itself is just a mongoose schema. Almost like if you want to think about a schema as a, that's what it is, a template. Here's my template. I could have called this template, right? Call it, you could have called it, that's really what it is, more than what, if you think about what a schema is, right? Notice what we did in games. Our game, we actually use schema itself, mongoose schema here. As when I go to users, instead of using mongoose schema, I'm just going to simply use schema. Okay, that's all it's doing. I'm just making an alias for it. Now, this is where we require passport local mongoose. We haven't done that yet, right? We've only included passport local, but here we need passport local mongoose for encryption and so on. Passport local mongoose is going to be equal to require, and then if I start typing passport local mongoose is the one I want, you can see I'm getting good code hinting there. Mongoose. And again, these are our modules that we require. So require modules for our user model. That's what we're doing, right? That's what we're going to start off with these, right? Okay, let's create our user schema. So our, by the way, you could also call this the user model, right? So we on here we kind of called it, we could have renamed this games model, right? We'll leave it as user schema, because that's the way we do it on the web. For passport, new schema, right? Notice that schema here is equal to Mongo schema. I'm going to open this up, and then I need a couple of objects. Notice that one of our objects here is going to talk about all of our properties that's inside of my template collection, right? And then at the bottom, we're also going to have, undo. For the bottom, right, we're also going to have another object, right? Remember this other object, there's two objects. One here for all of our properties to list our options. And one of them is our collection. Look, notice how it comes up now. Collection. We don't have to think about what it is. It's a built-in property. And the collection that we want is, just like we had games, that's going to be our user collection. That's where it's going to go. We're making our user collection. This is what this is. A little different than what we've done before. So we're going to start defining our username. So there's a username. That's our first property. But instead of putting in thing like this, string, right? We could do that. It's a string type. Instead of doing that directly, we could make it user, which is what I'm going to show you now differently than what we did last time. So I'm going to object. So user is now not just a one thing. It's a bunch of different options. I want the type. I can specify the type for my user. I can specify a default value if I want. You may find this useful later on. Right now, I'm not going to put a default value for my user. Obviously, it doesn't make any sense. So trim, which is adds a trim setter, so it creates a string only. That's in there, which is true. And is it required? Yes. And if it's required, what's the user message that I'm going to pass into my Flash, Connect Flash? Is required. Leave it like that, please. All right, so you can see that I've got a bunch of other things in here for my username. Property, but many different sub-properties, if you will, or options, right? The type and so on. If I hover over username now, it's an object, a one line. Now, how it goes to how it appears in our Mongoose database or Mongo database will just be username. Here is we're creating type hinting again and validation. So when we enter our form data, if it doesn't adhere to this, it will fail. It'll give us a message saying, no, you've missed something. Let's continue with this. So password is the next one for the password. And again, we're going to do another. And you know, for the most part, I want to copy this strategy here that I've got. Right, so I'm going to copy this whole strategy. I'm going to put it over here like this. Password, right? It's true, but instead of username is required, we're going to say password is required, right? I'm also going to ask for, in my case, this is our profile, our email, right? Now you can use this for different reasons, but I want to use email because I want to do email authentication or validation. And so I'm going to start building that up now because I know that I'm going to probably ask you to do something like that later on. So that's why I'm building it up now. You may not need it right at this moment, but I'm going to add this in here. Email is also required. A lot of things. When you sign up, all these things are required. Here's another one. Display name. Display name is also going to be required, right? Display name is required. Another couple of things that are more for administration perspective now. One of them is going to be called created. This as a create date. Right? So our type in this case is going to be date, right? And our default, take a look at this, is date.now. It's not required, which means it's going to set up my date now automatically, right? And anytime we update, we can, if we want, we're not going to though. We can do an updated version. So if we update our username or user information, which we might do later on, it's a date type, and we could also say our default value is whenever we update date.now, right? So lots of more complexity here in our model. We did a very simple model. We can't build you up like this right away because it's too much. I wanted to show you the simple model And here's the more complex model, right? With kind of more options here. Sorry, I'll bring it up. Make sense? Okay, so all we're doing is defining our collection. What our collection is going to look like. We haven't done anything yet. We haven't actually connected to the database. And this collection will not be created until we're finally able to log in and register. I create this collection. I'm not going to do it by hand, right? Because of the complexity of things I'm asking here, right? So Mongo, I could do it and modify it, but I'd rather look at it and analyze it with you after it's been created and see what we get. More complexity. So at the end of the collection, we're going to put a semicolon down here. To this area here, we're going to start at the bottom. We're going to talk about some options I want to add in. So let options equal to, and again, I'm going to open up a bracket like this, which is going to, it's going to look weird, which is going to be my missing password error is options. Watch. Is the wrong password. Now, you can make other options in here as well. And if you look at the documentation for Passport Local Mongoose, you can add in additional, right, when you log in. Okay, for now, I'm only going to put this option together, right? Options is equal to this. Notice that it gives me now a object. And the reason why I put it in brackets like this, I'm setting you up to make multiple options, right? So leave it like this for now. Down here now we're going to do user schema, right? Dot plugin. And what we're going to do is, this is new, is we're going to say Passport Local Mongoose, right? That's the thing we defined above. And we're going to pass in the options that we just defined. Missing password error. It's going to pass in here, and we're going to plug in this option, this Passport Local Mongoose option, which takes care of encryption and decryption, all that kind of stuff that we wouldn't have to code ourselves, right? Why would I do that if it's already made for me? If you want to do low-level security or that kind of thing, right here, go back to the Passport stuff that's in the book. That's lower level than what I'm doing here. Still quite high level from a security perspective, but definitely lower level than what I'm doing. I'm trusting that there's a plugin that does everything really nice, and it does actually. Now, normally we would do module exports, yeah, like this, module exports. Blah, blah. We're not going to do that here. Come up here. I want to exports dot user. I'm defining an object user equal to mongoose dot model, and I'm passing in user as the name, right, and my user schema as the pattern. Now, what is this doing, right? What it's doing is basically is user now, when I import from my model users, an actual user that I can get code hinting on, right? So all those things we just defined, email and da-da-da, hopefully we'll get some code hinting just by doing this, okay? So the user object will be defined when I import it, when I need it, okay? So slightly different configuration than what I had before, okay? I think this is a great place to stop. We've done a lot here, and I should have done way more commits in this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here. Notice that these are the apps, the things that I've changed. App.js, index.js, user.js. I'm going to say added user model and set up authentication. We'll say auth. Okay, and then we're going to click this. We're going to go here and push. Now you should have everything. If I was too fast, and obviously sometimes I'm too fast. You know, go up and grab this thing here. All right, so you don't have to hand bomb it yourself if you don't want to. But this is going to be our authentication model, right? Now for you, then all you need to do in here is go back after we're done today and remove. If you don't like, for example, you don't care about email, you don't care about display name, you don't care about created or updated. All you need is username and password. This, you know, kind of a two-part authentication scheme. Or maybe you don't want to use username and password. Maybe you want to use, that's fine, right? That's also very common nowadays, right? you need to start off with, this basic stuff. Okay, let's take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to start implementing stuff that we've just created. We need to connect to this user model, right? And that would be where? In my app.js first, obviously. So my app.js to our other model, right around here is where we're going to start connecting to our user model, okay? In about 10 or 15 minutes.